Community. What exactly is it? Well, that's a good question. I looked it up and no, it's not a show that was on TV for a while. For some of us gamers, myself included, it's one of the most important things in the games that we play, especially my personal favorite genre, MMORPGs. Yet, it seems like we hardly see them anymore. Sure, you may have a high player base in the game that you play, or maybe even a lower one, but my question is, how are those people? Some games have a reputation for their toxic communities, while others rave about how great their player base is. Although, more times than not, I seem to find myself feeling more and more alone in these games. So, Elder Scrolls Online is a game I've been playing a lot lately since the 1 Tamriel patch. It's been quite refreshing to feel the freedom to move from zone to zone at my own pace, not feeling restricted by the typical quest here until X level and then move to Y zone. Now, with any MMORPG, there's still a progression system, although we won't get into that here. I want to use this time to talk about what the update did for the game. Moving around freely from zone to zone allows players to pick their own adventure, much like the single-player Elder Scrolls games that we already know. This has made zones that previously felt like they were empty feel like they were bursting at the seams with players. However, not a whole lot of player interaction. Don't get me wrong, players still group up, either to party or just assisting people in the world, and ESO actually does have a pretty active zone chat, which helps that a lot. Each new zone that I go to seems to have its own unique feel, not only from the aesthetic, but also from the players that seem to be hanging out in those areas. Players discussing random things from trades, trying to get groups together, or asking for assistance, your standard MMO banter. But where this seems to fall short, much like in many games in the genre, is with the group play. So, Elder Scrolls Online does a good job at making players want to group up, or at least help other players. There are world bosses, open-air public dungeons, as well as various places where player assistance can definitely come in handy. However, once the group is formed and the task is started, it seems like there's little to no communication. Again, this is not just an issue with this one game, it's almost completely across the board at the moment. There was an MMOs.com podcast a little while back where they talked about this issue that seems to plague many games of the genre. Let's say you get into a group for a dungeon with a random dungeon finder that's basically in every game at this point. Maybe when the group first forms, you guys all say hi or what's up or whatever to each other, but afterwards you usually spend the next 15, 20 minutes, 30, whatever, an hour, depending on the length of the dungeon, in absolute silence. Let's face it, we've all been through this more times than we care to count, but is that a problem with the game? Did the devs do it to us? Or did they make it just too easy to find groups of people for content with little to no effort outside of clicking a button? Are we just so used to these lobby-based games that we don't notice? Should we blame the matchmaking system for turning other players into glorified NPCs with sometimes better AI? I mean, come on, we all know that one guy that just can't seem to get his shit together. Or should we blame ourselves? We used the find replacement feature to pick up a few more people, and they left almost instantly. A few of them even said hello. Finally, after some time, we got the group that was set on completing the dungeon, which we did. Now, what was really cool about the group I ended up getting is we all actually talked to each other. I'm not saying that this never happens, it just seems that these days it doesn't happen enough to the point where it really stands out to me when it does. So, it was my first time in this particular dungeon, so I asked for some help and some brief explanations of the fight. There was even another player who had never been there and he told me we could figure it out together, which was kind of cool. So, we progressed and the two more experienced players gave breakdowns for the fights as we needed them. Personally, I love it when players are open-minded to new folks joining their games and really want to try to help out. I mean, we can't take everyone under our wing, but maybe you help a person from time to time or something like that. It's what I try to do in most games I consider myself a quote-unquote vet in. The way I look at it is, I was new once, and if it wasn't for the people that coached me and helped me along the way, I probably would have quit or never really even progressed through the game or never achieved the level or status that I got to. That's the key, the player interaction. Now, we all interact with other players in MMORPGs. In fact, it's basically impossible to play one without at least running into someone else. Maybe you say hi, or it's just that quiet assistance as you help each other kill a mob or complete a quest, or maybe you just jump around like a bunch of idiots because you can't even be bothered to use your keyboard for anything but spamming the spacebar. But how many of us take the time to actually really chat with these people? Now, back in the old days, this was basically the only way to get things done in an MMO. The first MMORPG I played was Burning Crusade World of Warcraft. I started shortly after the expansion came out and spent the next few months grinding with my friends that ruined my life, brought me into the game. But through my adventures, I was never a stranger to other players. I even had a stupid macro set up that I would post in trade chat to advertise my lockpicking skills, and yes, I played a rogue. Although in my defense, I'd sworn off Blizzard games because of my Diablo 2 addiction and told my friends I'd never play WoW unless I could be a zombie ninja. And little did I know that there was an undead rogue, but that's besides the point. Either way, Look, my lockpicking macro was something along the lines of, tired of smashing your lockboxes against rocks to see if they'll open? Well, try the Fishman's lockpicking service. For a small fee, have a trained thief open those pesky locks for you. Sure, it was stupid, but it was fun, and sometimes players would whisper me something dumb or maybe just an LOL, but occasionally I would get a player that'd be like, right on, dude. That's pretty awesome. Like, hey, anytime I got lockboxes, I'll have you pick them for me. Just that's what's up. Simple stuff like that really makes the difference. Maybe it's easier for players like me to have random conversations with strangers on the internet, but that's really what makes the genre, in my opinion. If you ask me, the most important part of an MMORPG is the second M, multiplayer. Part of the reason I became hooked on the genre was because no matter what time I got on, there was always something to do, someone to play with, someone to talk to. The fact that I never felt alone when I played an MMO really made me feel like I could interact with so many more people than I ever would have during my day-to-day life. Maybe for myself and possibly a few others as well, it's easier for us to have these interactions with players in an online game. First and foremost, you know that you have something in common, obviously being the game that you're playing, and there's also this safety in knowing that these people don't know you or anything about you. You could pretend, say, do, or be anything you want. Some players choose to be that nice guy who's always helping out other players and giving lobies runs through dungeons to help them level, while others choose to be the town troll with the ability to turn any joke into something about your mom. These choices define who we are in these games and give us a bit of a reputation. I mean, ask any player who the biggest troll is on their server, or who the best PvPer is, or what's the best guild. Most players who spend a good amount of time in the game will be able to tell you that, or at least tell you the people that have affected them. The fact is, these developers spend time to create these amazing worlds for us to get lost in, whether it be diving deep into dungeons and raids, creating houses on our plots, or making money doing it for others. Getting the thrill of the kill as you work your way up the ranks in player versus player, or even something so simple as running around collecting mounts and pets. However, after the devs do their work, it's up to us. We're the ones that get to choose how the world will be shaped once we set foot in it. We're the ones that determine if the community is toxic, super friendly, or a bunch of freaking gold farmers. It's because of us that these games have the reputation that they do. Obviously, if you've seen any of the other videos on my channel, you know that I play WildStar. Not as much as I used to, but I still enjoy to jump into the game from time to time, even if it's just a ride around on my hoverboard. I know everyone has their opinion about the game, and some of them are probably right and some are probably wrong. However, one of the things that really drew me into the game was the player base. So I played at launch because, well, the hype was real. And I'm sure most of us know what happened after that, so I'll just skip ahead a bit. My friends and I that played Star Wars The Old Republic with had all planned to move over when the game came out. We picked our faction and classes well before the beta even dropped. And once I got a taste of that sweet, sweet Draken Stalker, man, my mind was made. This was going to be my game. And then everyone left. I didn't want to log in anymore because players were dropping like flies. Bug joke intended. So when my friends left, so did I. I ended up going to a private Burning Crusade server for a while and really enjoyed playing that. I made a good group of friends and it felt good to bring back some of the nostalgia. However, after a while, I really missed that live MMO feel. I asked around and tried to get a group of people to go back to WildStar, but nobody really wanted to join me. So I set out on my own, picking up where I left off. This was about 4 or 5 months before the game went free to play. The player base was smaller than most games, but very dedicated. After some time searching, I found a guild with like-minded players. Most of them I actually still talk to this day. Anyways, my guild took me in and helped me with my attunement process. Back when there were 14 fucking steps for it, it was ridiculous. As I continued to play, I noticed one big thing about the game. Maybe it was the smaller community, but you could really tell that people knew each other. There was always someone doing something, and players always asking for help or getting groups together to do world pauses to help people get attuned. Sure, it was like pulling teeth to get an adventure group together, but whatever. Maybe it's because I was on a private BC server before I went back that I didn't notice right away. Again, back in the day, the only way to get a group together was to advertise. There was no dungeon finder system in older games. Although WildStar had a dungeon finder system, people usually only used it after they got the group together and then they would queue for a random dungeon to get the bonus rewards. This may not seem like much, but what it actually does is it drives people to stay in the group until they finish the dungeon raid or whatever. You invested the time getting that group together, and I'll be damned if it's going to stop because one person drops. Hell no, the show goes on. This also spawns conversation with other players. You might have a little chat with someone while you wait for another person to join, and then you become friends with the person in your party or maybe even an enemy, but you add them to your friends list, and then the next time you see each other around, you may start up another group. You start building these reputations that we talked about earlier. You become the guy who is forming the groups, the guild that does help with attunements, or the dude that always gets world boss groups together, which in turn molds the experience for the other players as they join the game. It's an ecosystem, and much like an ecosystem, the worlds you play in cannot survive without it. Again, I'm not saying that this doesn't happen at all today, I'm just saying it's so freaking rare. In the world we live in today, it's very easy to get distracted. Some of the quality of life improvements in these MMORPGs really make the game easy to lose sight of what's important. Some of these quality of life improvements are also really awesome, and I thank RNGesus every single day for putting them in, but there's so much to do in these games that can blow your mind or even become very boring very fast because you're just overwhelmed. Although, if you ask me, I can play almost any MMORPG on the market right now and have a great time because regardless of how the game is, there are other players to talk to or jump around with, if I want to have a good time. Although I'm not saying you have to go out there and talk to every single person you run across, but maybe the next time you run around in your game of choice, you could consider saying something to some of them. Maybe you will be the next guy who helps the lowbies, or you have the most mounts on your server, or maybe you have the best your mom jokes and everyone loves to hate you. Or maybe you change someone's day. Okay, this video has already gone on for way too long, and I'm sure I've probably already lost most of you guys to Dungeon Pops or BGs or whatever. I hope you really enjoyed my rambling, but if there's one thing that you take from this video, I hope it's that you understand that the only people who can change how a game is perceived and what impression these games leave on others is us. Just don't forget the most important thing, guys. Good luck and have fun.